This is going to be a simple breakdown of me fixing up an old drum set. So it all began in July when I saw it, and I thought, why not? Why don't I give it a try? A little backstory. This is the drum set we had in our church before we got a new one, the blue one you always see on my YouTube page. So, yeah, I brought it home with me because it was experimental. I had to get the first thumb only and work on that first. See how well I do, establish my processes, and move on with it. And in time, I did get better. So as you can see here, you can see how badly the drum is. This is also the rest of the drum sets in a different video I took afterwards. The kick drum, the bass drum, the floor tom, and the second tom. Those were what else I was going to be working with. And like I said, I'll be breaking down the processes in this video. So I'll show you how I got to where I got to. And yes, in this video, you can see that I'd already dismantled them quite a bit. Removed all the screws and the lugs and just gave it a bare skin to start working from there. So there, of course, there were challenges and there were ups and downs, but all in all, we did what we could, and that's what I'll be showing you today. As you can see, I had separated everything. Obviously, it would help for accounting, being sure of what is what and what goes to what. So I had them separated out, which is very important. So you won't start having missing screws and missing lugs, any missing components in general. Also, if you notice, the insides of the drums were quite messed up. On the floor tom, a glue was used to attach a foam, for padding purposes. So I also had to sand that out. The floor tom also had issues. So all in all, it was quite stressful, I won't lie. But back to it. So the first thing first I had to do was inspect it and see how do I break down this drum set. And of course, like I showed you in the previous video, the first thing is to loosen the lugs, the screws, and just tear down to the bare wood, the bare skin, so everything had to come off. And I also didn't show it well enough in this video, but the metal aspect is another component that you have to look at a bit separately from the wooden shell. It's quite important, and both of them have two completely different processes. Yeah, so two different processes, and in this video I would be breaking both of them down for you. So but moving on, here I would show you obviously the tear down. First of all, you have to take off the drum head. That's the basic of basics. So I had to take off, I think this drum head has been here for about 3-4 years now. So it's rusty, it's dirty, and also we'll be treating the acoustics in this fix up. So once the metal rim is out, first things first, you take off the old and washed up drum head. And you can look into the shell. It's quite beautiful. Obviously, there are some water damages and some marks, but all in all, it's really beautiful. And I do remember the first time seeing it, I was just marveled. because you see it from the drum shell or from when you're trying to change the drum, but seeing it up close and knowing you would work on this is really just beautiful. So another big thing I noticed was that the edge of the wood, edge of the shell, was really messed up. It practically didn't have a bearing angle, which I would explain further down the line, but it didn't have a bearing angle, which is essential for the drum head. So here I show you a clearer picture. So instead of the drum head to have like a 45-degree or 60-degree slope, here it was just flat. It was uneven, it was flat, it was just like it was messed up. So here you see I've taken off the screws that hold the log shells. So everything is off. Next I'll be taking the attachment off to completely strip it down. So here you have a closer look at the shell, the inside. Obviously these markings were due to rust, but it doesn't really affect the drum shell itself. Obviously that can be sanded out, which I will do my best to, but it doesn't really affect the acoustic quality. But another thing I noticed was that the edges were rough. So I think that's just the manufacturer's build. So I did my best to sand it out and smoothen the edges that will house all the components and the various attachments that are required. Here you also have a close look at like I said, the manufacturer's build of the wooden rims and the wooden shells. Alright, up next, here I show what a simple candlelight and some scraper can really do. So the glue is mainly around the edges and at the point of contact between the start and the finish. So once you get the major point of contact from the start, or from the finish rather, and it's just, you can just use a little pressure and a little force and strip it down. And here, after stripping it down, I did some light sanding on the body first, and then decided to flatten out the edge on my sandpaper on the floor. Like I said, this was my initial attempt, so this is trial and error, but I think this should have come later, which when working on working on the rest of the drum, I did it that way. But yes, here I flattened out the edges, made it quote unquote true. So I trued the edges, flattened it out so that I can have a very, relatively flat edge to work with. And as you can see, it worked for the most part. It worked, but more flattening and more sanding was done later on. So I think in this little short clip will actually show way more of the stress I went through than any other part. Because one of the most stressful parts in doing this is taking off that glue. I'm still looking for a more efficient way to do it, but how I did it was using light or heat. At first try was using heat and scraping. So once I skin or burn off the glue a bit, I then use the scraper to take it off. But at some point it was affecting my drum shell, which I sanded out. You really can't see it, but then the next step I used was just pressure and force using the scraper. So once that is done, the next step is to stain my drum. Please, if you know anywhere I can get different varieties of stain, let me know for my future projects that I'll be working on. But here I use the standard stain, is red. And another tedious aspect, because this takes time to go through the drum, the entire shell, plus it dries out very quickly. So I had to really take my time with it and make sure the stain is in there all the way through. After the staining process is done, which you would see the results in just a bit, the is left to dry, which relatively dries quickly, especially under ideal conditions. That's adequate sunlight. It takes about 2 to 3 hours and it's completely dry and ready to work with. So um, it's beautiful. It really brings out the wood grain and the pattern on the drum shell, which is beautiful to see. And afterwards, left to dry. The next thing I have to do is actually to sand it down, which is the second most tedious aspect of it. Just to sand down all the drum shells to the desired level of lightness, which you can see here, and is really, really, really beautiful. So the next step is to have some rough sketches of what I wanted, and I finally landed with this, so I decided to go along with it. People would ask me, "Oh, how did you get that desired contrast?" And here you would see is something I would have to keep to myself for now. But yes, after the painting process is done, it's still some sanding will be done. But once the painting process is good, the next thing to do is to take it to the workshop and coat it. But you have to allow it dry for a few hours. Honestly, you can't see it here, but this is the third hardest part because I had to scrape it down, I had to sand it down, hours and hours of sanding of each component and spraying and painting. But all in all, it came out beautiful. This is after taking it to the workshop to get the glossy finish on it. And like I said, really, really proud work. And so here I just show a little bit of the coupling work that I had done. I put it on, and the next day, obviously, the drum shells, the drum heads had come on. All in all, I would say this took me roughly about 4 months to complete. We should have been shorter if I didn't have some issues, but it was beautiful. Well, another thing I would have to talk about is bearing angles. I think I'll do a dedicated video for that so that people will actually understand the components of the drum shells and how to spot which one is working correctly, which one is not correct, and all of that. But yeah, I really did enjoy this. It was a lot of work, but I did enjoy it. So thank you for watching. Greater your